Hello, this is Kim, and in this vlog, I'm going to be discussing um, current crises that we are all facing now, which is what the war in Syria has created, which is the basically exodus that's happening of people fleeing Syria and trying to get away from the war and the conflict and the suffering that's in their country and flooding, for instance, European countries. Now, the reason why I'm going to be discussing this is that it opened an interesting point for me with, I'm currently in South Africa, and this immigrant crisis is not really happening to me directly because it's mostly in Europe where um, they're seeing these people come into their country with the thousands, and all of a sudden they're being faced with people begging on the streets a lot more. They're being faced with the suffering of these people. They're being faced with their economic system being under pressure because now they have to take care of all these people. They're being faced with, what are we going to do? Is there enough jobs? Is there enough money? Is there enough resources to take care of all these people? Can we handle the pressure, etc.? So there's like this an interesting conflict that's busy brewing in Europe. So what opened up for me is when a family member told me about the situation, told me that, it is very much on their doorstep. It is very much in their playing out in their reality. In their reality, meaning that, living in Belgium for most of my life, having lived in Belgium, it always seemed as though things like war and suffering and starvation and all of those kind of horrible things that exist in the world, it always seemed as though it doesn't really exist because it doesn't exist in my world. I don't see those things going on. I see it going on in the news, but it's like as long as your own personal reality is stable, those things don't really exist or they don't affect me personally. So now it's like it is affecting everyone personally. It is going on. Everyone can see that it is happening because it is happening in everyone's um, direct, immediate reality. So therefore, um, what's busy happening is like there's a pressure cooker that's being created. There's a pressure that's being created because the economical system in most of these countries in Europe just can't handle the situation that's going on now with how it's set up, with tax money, social security, all of these things can't really handle really taking care of certain people. So obviously that's going to, in the long run, create certain consequences, such as, for instance, just people not being able to make money, or people losing their jobs, or there not being enough jobs, or tax money running out, or people getting angry about paying too much taxes to be able to take care of these immigrants coming into their country. So what's happening now is that a lot of right-winged movements are gaining followers, are gaining support. Right-winged people basically saying, look, we want these people out of our country because this is our country and we shouldn't have to pay for it and we shouldn't have to support them, which is like radical right kind of attitude. And it's logical why that would happen, because people are afraid of losing their livelihood. People are afraid of all these other people coming into their space. They're afraid of losing their possessions, losing their money, losing their space, losing their things. I mean, they're afraid of what's going to happen. They're afraid of what's going to happen to the system, because we can all see that it's forming a pressure on the system. We can all see that it's actually, the way the system is set up at this moment, it's unsustainable and something's got to give. They're all afraid of these strange people coming into their country. They're afraid of the rumors about Muslim people, Muslim countries, terrorist attacks, suicide bombs, all of these things going on in the media, whispers in the air. It's like becoming this point of pressure inside of people's minds, where the fear of survival turns into anger and hate, resentment, reactions, which turns into, for instance, supporting right, radical right movements in politics. Um, so, a point that is interesting to discuss and open up within all of this is that all of what is happening, all of the conflict, all of the right-winged movements suddenly gaining followers and momentum and gaining support, and the eventual conflict that's going to come from that, or all the suffering that's going to come from that. Because imagine if now there is a right-wing party coming into power. I'm going to just kick out all of those immigrants. So what's going to happen then? Obviously, it's going to just lead into more suffering, because what are these people going to do? We all know they don't have a support structure. We all know it's women and children and men, obviously, who are completely helpless and hopeless and are just looking for a home. That is massive suffering that's going on. So with this kind of reaction of wanting to push them out because we're afraid of losing our own survival and livelihood, that's obviously just going to create more suffering, because it's not a solution to the situation, it's a reaction. It's us pushing against that which we fear without coming up with an actual solution, but kind of hoping and assuming that if we just get them out of our little world, if we don't have to see it directly in our little world, then it doesn't exist. Then it's not there and it's all solved. But you know what? At the same time, we know what we're doing. We know that we are turning our backs against these innocent people who are just looking for a home, who are just looking for some care, who are extending their hand, hoping for another hand to take their hand and guide them and help them find a home, help them find comfort, find safety, all those basic things that we are all fighting for inside of ourselves, that we're all valuing inside of ourselves. So that means that even if we're going to be pushing these people out, let's say if a right-wing movement comes to power and they make the decision to close all the borders and to just not let anyone in again, it's like we might for a moment feel safe. We might for a moment feel like, okay, our country is protected, and so my livelihood and survival is protected, and nobody's going to invade my life and my reality. We might be able to tell ourselves that, but in the back of our minds, in the back of our, deep down inside of ourselves, we know that what we're actually doing is taking away the life and the survival from all of those other people. And we're just not going to be able to live with ourselves unless we suppress that truth deep down inside, unless, we deny and ignore reality inside of ourselves, deny ourselves just to be able to hold on to that illusionary experience of safety. And I say illusionary because in reality all the conflict is still going on. It's like there's always been conflict going on in this world, even though, for instance, with me living in Belgium, even though in Belgium everything seems stable for most people, most people can get by and are financially stable, even though it seems as though all of those bad things happening in the world, it just doesn't exist because it doesn't exist in Belgium. It's still going on in the world. It escalated and it led to what's going on in this moment, this war in Syria, all these immigrants coming, all these people looking for help. It was bound to happen. So if we go push them back, if we go react and go all right-winged on them again, it's just going to create more and more conflict and suffering and make everything 10 times worse. So basically what I'm saying here is that the only solution, the only thing that could possibly provide any form of solution in this situation is to, and this might be a bit counterintuitive for most of us, but is to change and consider changing, simply changing the system, changing the economical climate, the economical systems that are actually making this current situation unsustainable, that are creating the fear in people of losing their survival and livelihood. If it wasn't for this current system that we're living in, we might be able to take care of everyone. We might be able to welcome everything with open arms. We might be able to end all wars in this world, end all suffering in this world, if only we were to consider changing just a little bit about our political systems. And if anything, this current situation that's happening is giving us, it's a sign for us to consider that change. We always had to change it, but because the wars and the conflict and the suffering was outside of the borders of our own country, we were always able to ignore it, and we were always able to say, well, we don't need change. We were always able to come up with justifications and excuses as to why we don't need to change, why real change on a system level, on a political, economical level, and corporation level is not necessary. But now, with all this going on, which is becoming a pressure cooker, ready and waiting to just erupt into all sorts of conflicts and suffering, this is actually an opportunity, because it's giving us the push that we need to actually consider making that change, because we can see it. It's clear as day. That is simply the reality as it stands, which is that it's our economical system, our political system, the way we handle things, the way money flows, the way we use money, that needs to change. And it's possible. We can't just get away with saying, oh, it's not possible, it's not going to work, because it has to work. And we can make it work. If we want to, we can do anything. The problem has just always been that we're all too quickly and easily washing our hands off of doing those things that's actually necessary to be done, of taking the easy way, of saying, well, it's just not going to work, and just not making the effort to even consider it. So, it's high time for us to start considering these things that we never have been considering, because the reality is showing us very nicely that it's simply, we can't avoid it anymore. We can't postpone anymore. Or we can, but then we're just going to have to suffer the consequences, which will be quite severe. And we can all see it coming. So, there are many solutions out there, and just investigate just a little bit, and you will see that there are solutions out there. There are alternative methods out there, such as a living income guaranteed, which is just one of the many possible proposals of changes that can be made in the system. We just need to, be willing to let go of that fear, be willing to let go of the fear which turns into anger and hate, which turns into us supporting these right-winged political parties, which go into making radical decisions that's only going to create and end up in conflict. We just need to make that stance inside of ourselves where we don't allow our fear to dictate our decisions, but rather we do what we know is best for everyone in the long run. That which is sustainable, which is not fear, which is not anger, which is not emotional reactions, but common sense, making decisions out of common sense. So that was it for this vlog. I'll see you in the next. Bye.